Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Legion Alpha video. Today I'm going to be giving you a bit of a look at the Unholy Death Knight. As you can see in the bottom left, the servers are about to go down in 13 minutes, though the good news is I've already done a lot of my testing, actually all of my testing, and yeah, in this video I'm just going to be giving you a gameplay overview, more focusing on how the core rotation is and whether that is fun. So to do that, I'll go through the basic rotation, then we'll run through the abilities, the talents, I'll skim over the artifact weapon, and then I'll try to draw that all into a conclusion in the next 12 minutes. So, how does this spec work? Well, the very core abilities are rather simple. First of all, we've got Outbreak, which is what we use to apply our main plague. One core thing, though, you'll notice it costs 1 rune, not a rune of any type. Runes have all been homogenized. You now have 6 different death runes, basically, and you can recharge 3 at the same time, but there is no distinction between them. So blood runes, frost runes, plague runes, no, that stuff's all gone. They're all the same type now. Anyway, this plague basically does a dot, but for its first 6 seconds will spread naturally to nearby enemies, and you'll always want to be maintaining that via Outbreak. You don't actually have Plague Strike or anything like that. We've then got Festering Strike. This costs 2 runes, it does a whole bunch of physical damage, and it inflicts a target with 1 to 3 festering wounds. You might be wondering, what is a festering wound? Well, it is according to this, a legion that may burst with a Scourge Strike, which deals a whole bunch of damage and gives you runic power. So basically, you build up these festering wounds on a target, and then you pop them with Scourge Strike. Scourge Strike costs 1 rune. It does, it says here, like about 10,000 physical damage and then some shadow damage, and it will trigger a single stack of festering wound to explode. What do you do with all of this runic power that you get? Well, you dump that on death coils. They cost 30 runic power, and they will do some shadow damage to the target, but they will also give your lovely ghoul some energy so that he can use his, he or she, whatever, it's a ghoul, you know. I think any bits that really mattered have rotted off at this stage, so they can use their various different abilities. So if I was to run into combat here, you know, I go in, I hit Shift 2, that brings up my, my Virulent Plague. I then do a Festering Strike. You can see in the target that's actually given 4 Festering Wounds. Now if I hit 1, which is Scourge Strike, it's now 3 stacks of Festering Wound, but it's, you know, it's popped one of those wounds. Now that I've blown through all of my Festering Wounds that I've got on the target, the next thing I would want to do is reapply Festering Strike. It's, because of one of my talents, it can give me anywhere from 1 to 5 Festering Strikes, though the base ability is actually just 1 to 3. So it gives you a random amount of those Festering Strikes, and then you'll just get rid of all of them via Scourge Strikes. So what's funny about this is that Festering Strikes, the Festering Wounds, while they seem like a debuff, they're more of a resource. They're like your holy power or your combo points. You know, you build them up on a target, and then you spend them, and they only last for a certain amount of time. So overall, the core gameplay is run in, spend your resources right. Also, always make sure you've got 3 death runes recharging at all times, and then just maintain your Outbreak. That's the core of how this is. Now, it will get a little bit more into depth once I talk about a few different talents here, so I'm just going to quickly go through them. All Will Serve gives you a additional minion. It's basically a skeletal archer that attacks from range. Currently doesn't do anything interesting. We've got Bursting Spores, which means that when you pop a Festering Wound, it does a small AoE. And then we've got Ebb and Fever, which makes your Virulent Plague do damage 50% more frequently. Moving on, we've got Infected Claws. This means your ghoul's claw attack has a 50% chance to cause a festering wound on the target. Of course, claw will take energy, so the more energy for your ghoul that you're generating, the more it's doing claw, the more you've got a chance of getting festering wounds from that, which is all lovely. Pestilent Pustules, this means your Festering Strike can now apply from 1 to 5 festering wounds, and whenever you pop a festering wound, it will give you even more runic power. We've got Blighted Rune Weapon, which just makes your next X auto attacks inflict the target with a festering wound. Moving on, we've got Unholy Frenzy. When a festering wound bursts, your ghoul gets 50% increased attack speed until cancelled. I don't know why it says until cancelled, that's just a quick little buff anyway. We've got Castigore, something like that. Your Scourge Strike crits can refund an additional festering wound. That basically means your Festering Runes are going to be lasting on the target a little bit longer because this will be refreshing them. So, you know, your Sludge Strike will pop one, but then instantly generate one, meaning you've got a net difference of 0. We've got Clawing Shadows. This just replaces Sludge Strike with one that does, basically, it does shadow damage instead of physical damage as its main bulk. Because of your mastery, it should do a little bit more damage, and it also has a 30-yard range, unlike Sludge Strike. We move on to Sludge Belcher, which just gives you an Abomination instead of a regular Ghoul. Gore Seeker, Bursting a Festering Wound, gives you 9 additional runic power. And then there's Profane Pathogens. This costs 2 runes, 1 minute cooldown, and it causes all of your virulent plague effects within 100 yards to instantly erupt, and erupt is what will cause them to spread to additional targets. On to the next wave of things, we've got Asphyxiate, which is pretty much as it is now. Spell Eater, which reduces all magic damage taken while in Anti-Magic Shell by 20%. And then we've got Monstrous Rampage. Your Ghoul gains an ability, and it's not yet implemented. Who even knows if that's going to last into the next build? Moving on, Shadow Infusion. Dealing damage with Death Coil will decrease the cooldown of your Dark Transformation by 6 seconds. In effect, this means you can almost always basically have 100% uptime on that Ghoul, and if I just pop... where is it, my bars? There you go, Dark Transformation. That's what turns it into the big, like, scary Ghoul. We've got Vile Malady, I think, yeah. Death Coil deals 30% additional shadow damage over 3 seconds. That's pretty simple. Necrosis. Death Coil has a 25% chance to cause Virulent Plague to erupt when it damages infected enemies. That, in effect, so your Virulent Plague, it will last for 30 seconds, or 20 whatever seconds, as a base, but then it has this erupt effect for 6 seconds. Every tick of erupt that it does, and I think it does one tick every second for 6 seconds, will refresh the plague. So basically, every time that this necrosis is applied, it's extending your plague's duration by 6%. Now, there's the 100 talents are completely broken. I can't actually choose them. You've got Defile. We all know what that is. Dark Arbiter, this summons a Valkyr to assist you in combat, replaces Summon Gargoyle, but it's not yet implemented. And then Soul Reaver. Now, Soul Reaver is actually a baseline ability for some reason, so this will strike the enemy for 7,000 physical damage, and after 5 seconds, up to 3 Festering Wounds on the target will burst. Those Festering Wounds, currently, they actually burst instantly on the target, and you'll notice it does less physical damage than Sludge Strike does. So if you're in a situation where you have more Festering Wounds than you know what to deal with, and they're about to run out on your target, then it makes sense to use Soul Reaper to burn them off, and that kind of plays into the artifact weapon, which I'll skim over here. So, Apocalypse. Its effect is your attacks have a chance to summon a random member of your Army of the Dead, which doesn't really matter, but its actual ability here is called Apocalypse. All caps. You channel the power of Pestilence, dealing a whole crazy amount of damage, and then instantly putting 3 stacks of Festering Wound on the target. I've generally found that you end up doing Apocalypse, and because you've got so many Festering Wounds, you end up then doing Soul Reaper to kind of blast through them. As for the artifact weapon itself, so its main abilities, you've got Double Doom, so Sudden Doom grants you 2 free Death Coils. Sudden Doom is basically you get a chance on auto attack to get a free Death Coil. We've got the Shambler, so your attacks have a chance to summon a super zombie that shambles forward and explodes. And finally, Flagellation. Death Coil applies a debuff that increases Sludge Strike damage by 50%. Pretty important one, but with the servers about to die, I think it's really about time I got into gameplay here. So, how are we going to start this off? We'll just apply our disease. We'll do some stuff, so we always, always want to have our things on cooldown. Use Soul Reaper to blast through those, and now I'll show you what Apocalypse is. There you go, that's given me 3 Festering Wounds, so I'm going to burn them off with my Sludge Strikes. We're then going to burn off that additional runic power, do another Festering Strike. We've now got 3 stacks of Festering Wounds, which I can burn my way through. And that's basically how this plays. Yeah, you've got, your various different cooldowns and things, but right now it's a pretty basic spec. Do I find it fun personally? To a degree I do. It's not the best spec in the game. I've enjoyed most of the others that I've played a little bit more. But that said, I don't actually play this spec on live. and I've got to assume that this will play into how this is on live. I've actually never played an Unholy Death Knight before properly. Oh, there you go. You see, I actually just proc 5 Festering Wounds, but I've also got my Apocalypse off cooldown. That's a situation where you just got more than you know what to deal with, so that's when you want to be using like a Soul Reaper to get through them all. Now I'm doing my Apocalypse, and you know, spending my additional, or my Scourge Strikes to get rid of all of those stacks of Festering Wounds. Of course, unlike me, you want to be keeping 100% uptime on your Outbreak. I know I'm not playing this the best, I'm just trying to get everything fitted into the video, because, you know, if I explain how the rotation is to you guys, then, well, you'll understand how it plays, and that'll all be fine. So, in terms of pacing, what's it like? It is a decent enough pace. If you get unlucky procs with your Festering Strike, then what that in effect is you just not having that many resources to play with, which, you know, that can feel small. That actually can't, you know, doesn't really feel brilliant to play with. But when you get lucky with procs and you're in that situation where you find yourself always doing your Soul Reapers and your Scourge Strikes, you've just got so much stuff to burn through, then it actually feels quite fun and quite dynamic. I really do appreciate how there is decision making there, though. You know, it's more efficient in terms of, like, damage per global cooldown, I suppose, to use Scourge Strikes to get rid, you know, to blow through your festering runes. But you get into those times when, you know, you just need to burn them off the Soul Reaper. When to do that is an interesting decision in gameplay, and I always love it when specs kind of have those times where you need to make a decision between one thing or the other. And, you know, it's you know, it's not like you're playing, say, a Balanced Druid on live, where it's about just follow the bar, don't make any decisions for yourself, don't fuck up. With this, it's you know, it's about making decisions and thinking about what's kind of the right thing to do, which is pretty good. Overall, I think this spec is quite fun currently, though I want to see more built-out talents. I was actually watching Bay's video, and Final Boss, he did a video on this in the last build of the alpha, and the servers are about to die here. He did a video on this in the last build of the alpha, and some of the talents actually seemed a little bit more interesting than what we currently have. Though actually one of the level 100 talents, which honestly look quite crap, has since been scrapped. Since so many of those talents were changed in the last alpha build, I've got to imagine that we really can't take much of a conclusion as to the kind of very final playstyle for this class. I think the main thing we can say is it's built off maintaining your Plague via Outbreak, getting your Festering Wounds via Festering Strike, using your Scourge Strikes to burn through those, dealing with the RNG of how many that you're actually going to generate in terms of the Festering Wounds. There's a few different sources of them. Different builds, in terms of your talents, are probably going to prioritize different things. As an example, when I was playing there, you saw me with a build that was generating a lot of runic power, which meant that I was doing a lot of death coils. At least I would have been if I was actually paying attention. But there's other builds which are maybe prioritizing other aspects of the rotation, perhaps putting more of an emphasis on Festering Strike itself. So there's good opportunity for them to put gameplay in here. The general feedback that I've heard from this spec has actually been quite good, and I'll probably try to give Unholy a go on live now that the alpha servers are down, just to see how it feels. But that's basically been it for my look at this spec. I think it's got pretty good promise, though actually, if I'm honest, Frost was a lot more fun, though that might just be because Frost looks better, feels better for me in terms of the animations of the spell effects, and is maybe just a little bit more lol, hit the proc that lights up. And sometimes that's kind of fun. Anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.